Well, listen, one of the books, of course, making a lot of noise here lately. You've seen it on Hannity, Hugh Hewitt, when I say it, the author, the book, which is really raising a lot of controversy. I'm sure a lot of you know it by name. It's called The Amateur, and it's an inside look at the Obama White House with interviews and so forth of the inner workings of the White House. Some damning quotes by Bill Clinton, pounding his fist in frustration, asking his wife Hillary to run against the amateur Barack Hussein Obama. Joining me at this time is New York Times best-selling author of the book The Amateur, Edward Klein. Edward Klein, welcome to the Rick Amato Show.
Thank you, Rick. It's great to be with you.
You know, Ed, the one thing I need to ask you right out of the gate here, of course, the left hates what you wrote, and the Huffington Post, as I'm sure you saw, came out and did a little bit of a hit piece, if you will, saying that you interviewed Obama's former doctor who opposes Obamacare, and they say you twisted the quote around, you didn't include all the all the words as they were presented by the doc, and as a result, calls your whole book, the implication being it calls your whole field of work into question. What say you? Let's get that out of the question to begin with. That question out of the way to begin with. What say you when you see the left mainstream media, if you can call HuffPo mainstream, making those sort of accusations?
Well, I'm not surprised to begin with. I've been a journalist for, believe it or not, 50 years. I've interviewed prime ministers like Golda Meir and Indira Gandhi, presidents like Sadat and Reagan. I've written 7 New York Times bestsellers. This book, The Amateur, is going to debut this Sunday as number 1 on the New York Times bestseller list. I've been the editor-in-chief of the New York Times Magazine, the foreign editor of Newsweek. I don't think I have to worry about these ridiculous hit jobs by left-wing media organizations that don't know what they're talking about. When I say somebody said something, believe me, I've got the notes to back it up, or in some cases, the tape recordings to back it up.
All right. Well, very good, very good. And it's that's. I'm sure our audience got a little bit of a chuckle, if you will, when you mentioned that you were the editor of New York Times Magazine. One of the reasons why I think your book is so important, Ed Klein, and before we get into the book, I want to throw this out at you. The left disagrees, and I don't know how they can, but do you agree that this president simply was not vetted by the media in 2008, as we come to expect the media to vet all presidential candidates?
I would go further than that, Rick. I'd say he was not vetted by the mainstream media in 2008 at all, and that he has not been held to the same standards that other presidents have been held to during the time he's been in the White House. Even today, during his campaign, he's still not being properly vetted by the mainstream media because, quite frankly, they want to see him win. So they're not the media anymore. They're rooters. They're backers. They're cheering squads for him.
Amazing. All right. Tell us about the book. What made you decide to did you start out with a premise, Ed Klein, based upon rumor, scuttlebutt, conversations that you were tipped off on?
I started off with the single, simple premise that I'm a reporter, and I couldn't quite understand how this guy, Barack Obama, came out of nowhere, had no experience, had no record to run on, and yet entranced and hypnotized millions of people and got elected and then turned into something that we've never seen before, which is an amateur in the White House, somebody who doesn't know how to do his job. And it struck me that given the fact that he had made millions of people believe that he was going to save them from themselves, this was an incredible story. A sad story, of course, but nonetheless an incredible story that had to be told. What was the dichotomy between how do you explain the dichotomy between the guy who ran in 2008 and triumphed over Hillary Clinton, crushed McCain, ran a fantastic campaign, got into the White House, and became a wuss?
How does someone with such lack of experience, as Obama had in politics, go from, just a few short years earlier, he was a state senator in Illinois,
where, by the way, he did very little and hardly showed up for votes.
How does someone have that ability to make people believe in him and have the political acumen to avoid the pitfalls that come with big-time politics?
Well, I can call him an amateur, as I have in the title of the book, but when it comes to campaigning, he and his campaign team, headed by David Axelrod, are nothing short of brilliant. Now, that may not go down easily with some of your listeners who don't like to use the word brilliant in any way associated with Obama, but we have to give the devil his due. And that is that when he gets on the stump, he's a tough, take-no-prisoners, bare-knuckled campaigner. And the guys behind him will stop at nothing to help him win. There's Chicago style of politics. It's brutal, and he's great at it. And he's a very effective campaigner. And he comes across, when campaigning, to many people, not to everybody, but to enough people to get him elected, as a likable campaigner to boot. It's only when he got into the White House, where I spoke to many, many Republicans and Democrats in Washington, that it turns out he's not a likable guy at all when it comes to actually dealing with other people. It's only when he's on a platform in front of a big, audience that he seems very effective. Unlike, say, Lyndon Johnson, who couldn't give a decent speech or couldn't read well from the teleprompter, but knew how to work the levers of power in Washington and get things done. This guy gives good speeches, looks good in his ties and neckties and his suits, and doesn't know the first thing about politics when it comes to governing and being an executive.
Give us an idea. So in that aspect, he's certainly an amateur.
That is right. That's where he's the amateur.
Okay. It's become well known now, the story within your book about Bill Clinton pounding his fist and exuding his wife to run for office. Tell us about that, please. Tell us. I think you left. Tell us how you learned about that, and did Hillary ever seriously consider the idea of running?
Well, in August 2011, not quite a year ago, Bill called a meeting at his home in Westchester County, Chappaqua, and he invited his wife. Bill and his wife hardly see each other most of the time. Invited his wife, he invited Chelsea, and he invited several friends and political hangers-on because he had something to tell them. He had done a secret poll. He had commissioned a poll. This is in August 2011, a year away from the Democratic Convention, in which he pitted Hillary against Obama and took a poll to see if she could beat Obama in the Democratic primaries that were coming up in 2011 and in 2012. And according to the poll, she could. Now, Hillary knew nothing about this poll, was kind of taken aback, and was worried that Obama was going to get word that Bill was dealing in this treachery.
Sure.
And she said, how can I even consider doing something like this? I'm his Secretary of State. I dine with the guy every Thursday at the White House. I have lunch with him. What about loyalty, Bill? I mean, have you thought about loyalty? And Bill Clinton said to her, according to two people I interviewed who were in the room, there's no such thing as loyalty when it comes to politics. The word doesn't exist in politics. He then went on to say that as far as he was concerned, the people around Obama didn't understand how the real world works, that they had lost our AAA credit rating for the first time in American history, and that they had really screwed up the economy, and that Obama himself is, according to Bill Clinton, as reported by these two people, is an amateur. So when I interview these people, I interviewed them separately and corroborated their stories. And I had written, as you know, I've written a book about Hillary Clinton, so I have a lot of sources inside the Clinton camp. I thought that was such a perfect noun to describe this president. He is the amateur, and that's where the title of the book comes from.
But at the end of the day, Hillary did not seriously consider this offer.
Well, Hillary was very concerned that if she did such a thing, if she ran against Obama and lost, and the chances she felt were that she would lose, that she would blow it with the Democratic Party